Hello there folks, I'm back again with another speed paint for you guys. And this week we have another Pokemon speed paint where I will be drawing some Sableye variants inspired by various commonly mined minerals. So without further ado, let's get into the speed paint. For this speed paint, I ended up going with 6 different materials to design my Sableye designs around. These 6 materials were coal, gold, diamond, iron, copper, and salt. These are not only very commonly mined things, but also I believe they are sufficiently visually different enough for the designs to feel more distinct from each other than if I had picked a lot of very similar looking materials. So I had a lot of fun with this. Sableye is one of my favorite Pokemon, and it's a very simple design. It's basically just got that little gremlin body, the head, and the ears. So ultimately, those are what I could change as the variables. For Sableye, you kind of want to keep the silhouette mostly the same. It has that big honkin' head, 2 big eyes, a gem in the chest, 2 big ears, and skinny, lanky arms with little pointy fingers and toes. So basically for each of these designs, I went ahead and did something to the eye shape, the color palette, and the ear shape in order to keep each of them distinct from each other. The first one I did was the coal, which I made kind of have this lumpy irregular eye shape, kind of like little lumps of coal. And I made its ears kind of look like they're burning or falling apart. Since this is a carbon-based material that isn't very hard, I feel like coal and other things such as, charcoal or graphite have a tendency to be kind of brittle, so I kind of wanted it to look like it's falling apart or maybe even burning. For gold, I wanted to keep a nice round look. I was kind of inspired by the idea of gold coins, since obviously Sableye in its normal form is supposed to be based on like gemstones in caves and stuff, but its eyes are all actually gems, like actually cut rocks, so I wanted to take inspiration from actual cut mineral as well as the natural raw form. So for gold, what better thing to do than trying to take inspiration from gold coins? And I let those round shapes inform the shape of its ears, and I really wanted this one to look like, I don't know, it's a little extra mischievous compared to the rest of them. After all, gold inspires mischief and I think greed in people more than really any other mineral. Then I have diamond. I of course made it have diamond shaped eyes. That wasn't really my intention when I was drawing those at first. I was just looking at these pieces of raw diamond, and genuinely, that's kind of the shape that they are. They're also surprisingly, cool toned, I would say. Raw diamond and, unprocessed diamond actually looks very interesting. You would never know based on the way how, I just think cut diamond is a very overrated gemstone. I think it's very plain. But I do like raw diamond, it looks pretty cool. It's just, you can kind of see how it's, related geologically to things like graphite when you see it as the raw gem. You can kind of see how the shape is very similar to other carbon-based gemstones, which I think is pretty cool. The next one was iron, which is, that's gotta be one of the most common mined materials ever. I went with sort of hexagonal eyes similar to the actual Sableye, and I try to give it a lot of pointy shapes since iron's used in a lot of things that are sharp and pointy, such as blades or knives or things like that. The next one was copper, who is one of my favorites. Copper's gotta be one of my favorite minerals. It's just it looks beautiful as is, it looks beautiful when oxidized, it is just a lovely lumpy shape as raw copper. I just think it's a very, very lovely metal. So I really wanted to honor that by making this guy kind of round and a very traditional goblin-y sort of shape. I gave it very irregular eyes too, since that's one of my favorite things about copper as a raw mineral is its irregular shape. And it made the tips of its fingers also very colorful, which you'll see later in the process. And last, but certainly not least, I have salt, who I gave square-shaped eyes and a lot of cubic elements, since salt as a crystal is cubic. I based its colors around Himalayan pink salt, since I thought white salt might be a little plain, and I thought it would be kind of cool to have it have white eyes like traditional sea salt, and then pink like Himalayan pink salt. After all, sea salt is not really mined from caves, it's collected from the ocean, and that's the stuff that is white that we typically think of, whereas Himalayan salt actually comes from mines, so it is a little bit different in color because of its iron-based impurities from being in a cave. Coloring these was pretty simple. I did pretty much just like 2 color variants for all of these. While base Sableye has many colors in its design, basically the eyes, the body, and the various gemstones placed on its body, I really wanted to simplify the color palettes for these guys to keep them each distinct and to sort of unify them in the fact that they are all equally simple. So for Cole, I went for a mainly black body with glowing red eyes and a sort of gem in its chest that would almost imply that you're looking through it and seeing it burn, sort of like the inside of like coal burning in like a steam engine or something like that. I thought that would be kind of a cool effect and really lead into that ghost typing. For gold, obviously I went with, what else? The color gold. I did my usual sort of like gold material shading process on it. I used a lot of very warm, saturated colors for both the shading and the highlight, since gold is really strange to render. If you really want it to look beautiful and like how gold really looks, you gotta really lean into the warmth of the colors, and I think I did fairly good with that. Diamond, of course, like I talked about, there is a lot of surprising cool tones in raw diamond, so I tried to really lean in and exaggerate those, especially to make this thing as different from the coal one as possible. So I decided to lean into the blue aspect. After all, diamonds in Pokemon are already associated with the color blue, thanks to our friend Dialga and our other friend Carbink. So in order to lean away from coal, which is black and red, I made this one black and blue. For iron, iron evokes the color red, of course, and a lot of iron-rich soils have like this reddish-brownish tint. Where I live, there's a lot of iron-rich like soil and silt and stuff, so I'm pretty familiar with that like kind of admittedly nasty color. And I tried to add like these speckles in the eyes of iron to kind of give it that vibe, like it's not perfectly smooth like raw iron really is. And I really try to lean into the redness of it, since I feel like there's very, very little red in base Sableye, and I thought it would make it more distinctive from coal, which is mostly black, and gold, which is, more of a orangey gold color. And then of course there's copper. For the colors for this one, I think they were the most interesting since I did the oxidization on some of its body parts. For example, the tips of its ears, its eyes, and the tips of its fingers, I tried to exaggerate a beautiful blue tone to make it look nice and oxidized. After all, that's probably my favorite palette on copper, is when it's a little oxidized but not all the way. And I thought I would just add a little more visual interest and make this one a little more distinct from the other 5 friends it has. And then of course there's salt, which I talked about before. I made this one primarily pink to resemble Himalayan pink salt, which is actually mined, versus sea salt, which is usually not, I don't think. I made the eyes and the gem in its chest more like a sea salt white to add a little contrast, and also just because those are more well known to be the salt color, I would say. And I try to give it a treatment like kind of like how a salt lamp looks. Like if you look at a big chunk of salt, it's very like pink towards the center and then usually more white towards the edge. So I tried to encapsulate that vibe, hit that sort of energy with the way I rendered the salt Sableye here. For the background for this piece, I went for something pretty simple to keep the composition all together, put down a nice flat rectangle in the background, and threw down a grid to sort of give it, I don't know, I feel like throwing down a nice grid in the background of a thing that has a lot of characters in it like this gives it like a sort of field guide or natural like journal vibe. I don't know, is that just me? Does anyone else share that sentiment? Let me know. But I think a dotted grid really adds to this like notebook field guide vibe, which I think is totally perfect for any time I'm doing something like variants on a Pokemon or like species variants for a character design or something like that. Overall, I think these are all pretty sufficiently different from each other. I think it looks like they all look like they're source mine, like they're from the places that I designed them around. And I think they're really cute. Sableye is one of my favorite Pokemon, and I'd love to revisit this challenge again, since there's a lot of other types of mines and stuff out there. Like, this isn't even really touching upon, like, minerals and crystals, like gemstone type stuff. A lot of these are just, like, you know, metals and, like, strictly useful materials and not, like, the nice, pretty ones. So I think it'd be fun to make ones based on things like emeralds or silver or things like that in the future. Overall, I'm very happy with this set. I feel like they are all pretty different from each other, but they all read clearly as a type of Sableye, and I think they're really darn cute. And with that, that is all I've got for you guys today. Which Sableye was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. I think my favorite for this one, I don't know. I think it might have to be Copper, but it's really hard to pick. They are all really, really cute, and Sableye is one of my favorites. If you would like to support me, I recommend checking out my Ko-fi page. It's the best way that you can help me financially support myself, pay the bills, help feed my pet, all sorts of things like that. Really, decreases my stress to have, more regular income from my art, as opposed to just from my part-time job, so any support you guys can give me there would be extremely, extremely appreciated. I'm also trying to get to 100 subs by the end of the year here on YouTube, so if you like this video, if you like looking at my art, if you like hearing me ramble about my process while you do something else in the background, feel free to subscribe. I would love to grow my community a little more. At this point, I think I've been doing speed paints weekly for about 6 months now, so I'm pretty proud of myself for making that many videos and keeping up with my schedule despite a lot of hiccups along the way. I'm pretty proud of myself for that, so thank you all so much for watching. I will see you all again next week with another speed paint. And in the meantime, why don't you go out there and make some art?